The Las Vegas Raiders have plenty of intriguing decisions to make this offseason. Today, I want to discuss 5 free agents who could be excellent targets for them. These players could make a big impact on the team, and I'll walk through each one to explain why they might be a good fit. What's up, buddies? Welcome back. If you are new here, make sure you hit the subscribe button. We cover all AFC West news here on this channel. It's unlikely the Raiders will sign all 5 of these players. Realistically, they might bring in just one, and that player could command a contract in the range of $10 to $12 million, give or take, depending on their caliber. If we look back at last season, the Raiders signed Christian Wilkins, which significantly bolstered their defensive line. Unfortunately, injuries took their toll, and we didn't get to see the full potential of that unit. This year, if the Raiders can add 1 or 2 key pieces and solidify the quarterback position, they could set themselves up for real success. Today, I'm not going to discuss quarterbacks. There are free agent quarterbacks out there like Sam Darnold or Jameis Winston. Some players might even be released or traded, such as Aaron Rodgers or potentially Matthew Stafford. But predicting how the Raiders will address the quarterback position is always tricky, so we're leaving that topic off the table for now. Instead, let's talk about what the Raiders need to do this offseason to truly improve and become Super Bowl contenders. One area they should target is the right tackle position. Looking at their current roster, they already have a player with potential at that spot. Glaze. Glaze could turn out to be the real deal for the Raiders, but he hasn't proven it yet. At the same time, he hasn't shown that he's not the guy for the job either. It's a bit of a wait-and-see situation, but investing in this position could go a long way for the team. For the Las Vegas Raiders, sticking with Glaze as the starting right tackle is an option. You could move forward and give him the opportunity to develop, but there are some things to keep in mind. Glaze was a third-round pick, not a top 10, or even top 20 selection. This means his leash isn't as long as it might be for someone drafted high in the first round. Players taken in the third round are often seen as developmental or backup options rather than immediate franchise players. Tackles with experience and upside don't hit the market often, which is why someone like Cam Robinson could be a great target for the Raiders. Robinson isn't an elite top 10 tackle, but he's solid. He brings size, length, and experience to the position and is still entering his prime. He's likely to improve as time goes on. Robinson's availability came after some roster and budgetary challenges. For example, when the Jaguars traded him, it was clear they couldn't fit him into their long-term plans financially. Similarly, the Vikings, who traded for him, might now face difficulties keeping him due to cap constraints. For the Raiders, Robinson represents a potential bargain. He'll likely command somewhere between $12 to $15 million annually, which is reasonable for a player of his caliber. Signing him would allow the Raiders to strengthen their offensive line while giving them flexibility with Glaze. They could move Glaze inside to guard, which might better suit his skill set and experience at this stage. This isn't to say Glaze should be written off. He made some promise last season, but offensive tackle is a critical position, especially when it comes to protecting your quarterback. If the Raiders decide to roll into the season with Glaze at right tackle and he doesn't perform well, it could create significant issues for the offense. Strengthening this position with someone like Cam Robinson could be a proactive step to avoid that scenario. Keep in mind that Chip Kelly's scheme introduces a completely different dynamic compared to what the Raiders have run in the past. This season, the offense will likely rely more on 5-man protections. If the team goes into the season with Glaze at right tackle and he doesn't perform well, it's not a change they'll be able to make midseason. This is why it's critical for John Spytek and the front office to carefully consider their options as they approach the draft and free agency. Revamping the offensive line and solidifying those anchor positions at tackle will be essential. Cam Robinson remains a strong candidate in this regard and should be seriously considered. Another area the Raiders need to focus on is building on their existing strengths. Looking at what the team does really well, it's clear that getting after the quarterback is one of their strong points. Despite dealing with injuries last season, the team still performed admirably in pressuring quarterbacks. Rob Leonard played a big role in that success, but it's also a testament to the talent on the roster and the ability to bring in players who may have struggled elsewhere but found success in the Raiders system. One way the Raiders can improve next season is by adding depth to the defensive line or even targeting a top-tier defensive tackle. A standout option could be Osa Odighizuwa from the Dallas Cowboys. Last season, Odighizuwa ranked 3rd in total pressures, recording 7 sacks, 14 quarterback hits, and 60 pressures, behind only Chris Jones and Zach Allen. Adding a player like Odighizuwa would elevate the Raiders' defensive line to another level. With Christian Wilkins already signed, Max Crosby under contract, and Adam Butler and Malcolm Kunsey as pending free agents, the Raiders have some flexibility. Instead of re-signing Kunsey, they could use those resources to bring in a player like Odighizuwa, who could make an immediate impact. Strengthening this area would not only reinforce an already strong defensive line, but also help the Raiders remain competitive against top-tier offenses. Kunsey isn't going to cost just $5 million. This isn't Madden. In the real world, pass rushers of his caliber will command north of $15 million. For the Raiders' decision-makers, whether it's ownership, the general manager, or the coaching staff, the question becomes this: would you rather have a top 10 to top 15 defensive end who can rush the passer, or a top 10 to top 15 defensive tackle with similar pass rushing abilities? Essentially, it comes down to swapping Kunse for Odighizuwa. Personally, I have a soft spot for Malcolm Kuntz, so I might lean toward keeping him. However, Odighizuwa is an incredibly intriguing option. If the Raiders want to take their defensive line to the next level, this could be the way to do it. Imagine a rotation where you have Max Crosby, who can win against any one-on-one matchup, Christian Wilkins, who's dominant in the same scenarios, and Odighizuwa lined up next to Wilkins. Adding Odighizuwa would create a nearly unblockable interior presence, especially if Adam Butler is brought back for depth. We'll see how everything unfolds as we move forward, but let's talk about another player the Raiders should strongly consider: Amari Cooper. Cooper, a former Raider, is a pending free agent. He was recently traded from the Cleveland Browns to the Buffalo Bills, but this past season didn't go well for him. It's hard to say if his struggles were entirely his fault. The Browns had a messy quarterback situation, which didn't work out for Cooper, with Deshaun Watson and Jameis Winston alternating at the position. Then, after being traded to the Bills, he still didn't find much success. Statistically, this past season was the worst of Cooper's career. However, there's a possibility an injury might have impacted his performance, something that hasn't been widely reported. Just last year, Cooper put up 1,250 yards and 5 touchdowns. The year before, he recorded 1,160 yards and 9 touchdowns. He's proven he can be a productive wide receiver, and that's why he could be a good fit for the Raiders. Cooper isn't necessarily the true X-wide receiver type, but that's not a deal breaker for the Raiders. With Brock Bowers in the lineup, who, while not an X-wide receiver either, commands double teams, the Raiders already have a primary weapon to lean on. Adding Amari Cooper as a complementary piece would strengthen the passing game. Even at 30 years old, Cooper still has 2 to 3 solid years left in him. He remains an excellent route runner with the ability to create separation, traits that would align perfectly with the Raiders' offense. Now, some might argue, why not go after T. Higgins instead of Amari Cooper? But the reality is that Higgins isn't a realistic option. The Bengals have made it clear they plan to franchise tag Higgins if they don't sign him to a long-term deal. He's not hitting the open market. While fans might wish for Higgins, the odds are slim, and it's better to focus on realistic targets. Cooper, along with a few others like Stephon Diggs or DeAndre Hopkins, is among the few wide receivers who could truly be available. Most of the other big names will likely stay with their current team. Switching gears to another key area, the offensive line, another player worth discussing is Mekhi Becton. Previously with the Philadelphia Eagles, Becton has made a name for himself, but he's not without flaws. He can lose reps and sometimes struggles against speed rushers. However, what Becton does bring to the table is undeniable potential. He has shown flashes of being an elite or Pro Bowl caliber guard, and at just 25 years old, his upside is significant. For the Raiders, Becton presents a cost-effective option compared to someone like Trey Smith. While Smith may be a more polished player, he'll also come with a higher price tag. Becton offers the chance to develop a young, talented lineman who can grow with the team. If the Raiders can bring in someone like Becton and bolster their offensive line, it would provide a solid foundation to protect whichever quarterback they decide to move forward with. Trey Smith has consistently proven himself, which is why he'll likely command a hefty salary in the range of $18 to $22 million annually. On the other hand, Mekhi Becton is a more budget-friendly option, potentially available for around $10 to $14 million. This figure is similar to the contract Damian Lewis received last year from the Carolina Panthers, which landed in the $12 to $13 million range. Becton's injury history is a factor, but his upside makes him a viable target for a team like the Raiders. If DJ Glaze remains the Raiders' right tackle, adding Becton as the right guard could significantly improve the offensive line. This move would offer immediate relief while the team works to revamp the entire unit. The truth is, the Raiders need 2 new starting caliber guards. The current group lacks the ability to provide consistent impact at the line of scrimmage, as evidenced by last season's struggle. The Raiders are in a good position overall, with several standout players already on the roster. Brock Bowers is among the league's top tight ends, and Jackson Powers-Johnson anchors the offensive line at center. Jacoby Myers and Michael Mayer may not be game changers, but they're a reliable second option. Defensively, Max Crosby is proven pass rusher, and Malcolm Kunse and Adam Butler have top 15 potential, especially in Patrick Graham's effective defensive scheme. If the Raiders address key positions like right tackle, guard, wide receiver, and running back, whether through free agency or the draft, and solidify their quarterback situation, they'll be in great shape moving forward. So, guys, what do you think? Share your thoughts in the comment section.